and welcome to Games as Lit 101. I've been wanting to do some more topical episodes on this show, and some recent events have given me an excellent opportunity to talk about a current issue as it relates to gaming as a whole. So let's talk a bit about Fatal Frame. Fatal Frame is a horror series I've mentioned before on this show because it's far and away my favorite horror franchise of all time. Each game centers on a young woman exploring a mansion or town with a history of terrible rituals, defending herself from ghosts while searching for someone close to them. The game uses a cinematic third-person perspective, but since you fight the ghosts with a camera, you have to go down to their level in a first-person view to actually fight them, and the games are brilliantly terrifying. The first 3 games were brought to the United States and sold acceptably well alongside glowing critical reception. The second in particular is known as a hallmark of the video game horror genre, and the third in particular is my personal favorite. Unfortunately though, the 4th game, exclusive to the Wii, was never actually ported over to the United States, much to the dismay of many of us fans. So in order to prevent such a thing from happening with the upcoming Wii U exclusive 5th game in the series, a little movement popped up called Operation Zero, in reference to the series' original Japanese title, Project Zero, to organize fans and help make sure Nintendo knew there was an American audience for this game. Thankfully, they succeeded, and the game is indeed coming to America. And if you'll allow me to geek out for a second, this game looks amazing. It's got all the hallmarks of the series, what looks like a fairly unique premise playing on the fear of water, and most importantly, it uses the Wii U gamepad as the camera. So you control the game normally, but when you need to use the camera to take pictures or fight ghosts, you raise the gamepad and use it as a viewfinder. That's freaking awesome. Add my existing love for the franchise, and it's easy to see why I'm looking forward to this game so much, and so glad that they're actually bringing it to the United States. Not long after, Nintendo announced a limited edition for the UK, and there was much rejoicing. Soon after that, Nintendo announced that the version coming to the United States was going to be digital only. There was significantly less rejoicing. In this specific instance, there are a number of problems. One of the more obvious is simply that all of the content for the game, including its physical release and all the limited edition content, has already been localized into the English language for the UK release, so the effort to bring it to the States is absolutely minimal. But the worst part is that early Wii U models have only 8 GB of memory inside of them. This game is shaping up to be probably about twice that amount, meaning that Nintendo is releasing the game in America using a method that actually restricts many Wii U owners, the early adopters of the Wii U of all people, from actually playing it. Obviously this is a bit of a problem, but it's not actually a new one, and for that matter it does exist in a lot of places, but I am going to focus specifically on Nintendo for the purposes of this video. Generally speaking, the most beloved games on Nintendo's systems don't usually have that many copies sent over here. Go to your local GameStop, check out their pre-owned DS section. You will find a million copies of games like My Baby 3 and Friends. No, seriously, that's an actual thing. But you're far less likely to come across even a single Hotel Dusk, Apollo Justice, or Castlevania Dawn of Sorrow. Other games, like the aforementioned Fatal Frame 4 and the second Ace Attorney Investigations game, never even make it stateside. And even Nintendo's first-party games are rare enough that supply and demand dictates they hover around $30 used forever. I mentioned Operation Zero earlier, and it's actually something of an offshoot of an earlier endeavor called Operation Rainfall, responsible for bringing The Last Story, Pandora's Tower, and Xenoblade Chronicles to the United States, all 3 of which were already localized for the English language at the time, and the latter of which Nintendo is now capitalizing on in the States like it was their idea to begin with. But this came to a head recently with the way they've been handling Amiibos. Now, I know I'm not saying anything new by talking about how poorly they've handled those, but holy crap have they handled them poorly. They never make enough of them, they sell out the moment they go on sale, and then they just never make any more for us. They get to sell less, we get to buy less, just everyone loses. But not only has Japan not seen nearly as much of this problem, when they have actually run out, Nintendo has often made reprints of them, and these reprints have rarely seen much significant representation outside of Japan, despite absurdly high demands. And now they're making a game that a lot of people in the States want available only in a format that many Wii U owners will actually not be able to acquire it. So what does all this have to do with the kinds of topics Games as Lit 101 normally covers? Well, it relates to the accessibility of art. Throughout history, the arts have had varying levels of accessibility to the public. In many instances across history, it was essentially a symbol of status, gaining power through its exclusivity rather than its ability to actually reach people with its message. In more recent times, we've had a much bigger emphasis on making sure that art is available to everyone, especially with, more recent developments like the mass production of media arts and the internet. Art is important on a cultural and societal level, and going off of that, it needs to be accessible for people to actually experience and learn from it. But policies like Nintendo seems to hold towards the United States actively hinder that accessibility. Now, I'm not suggesting that Nintendo needs to make everything they ever make available all the time for everyone ever, or anything like that, nor am I saying that this issue is specific to video games. It has actually plagued all art forms ever, and considering art is always made by people who do need a level of financial support for all the time they put into it, it's certainly understandable that finances play a role in decisions like, when to put effort into bringing something to another country. The issue here is that they're equipped to make their work available in the US, and there's clearly demand for it here, but they give us something of a cop-out answer that assumes the game's failure, and ultimately is going to be the cause of any failure on the game's part. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy that stems from a critical misunderstanding of their consumer base here in America, and the result is limited accessibility of the art they produce. So if I may speak directly to Nintendo for a moment, as if anyone who works there is ever actually going to see this video. Nintendo. I understand where you're coming from. Gaming culture in America does have a lot of problems, not the least of which is a hesitation to value or even really try anything that doesn't fit within a certain mold. When I see that Devil's Third, a brand new action shooter, has been advertised over here for months, and Fatal Frame, part of an established and beloved franchise, is being unceremoniously dumped onto your digital store, I see a company that looks at America and fears that anything outside the mold, anything but guns and violence, won't sell over here. And you know what? You're right. And it is a problem. But you also need to understand the position you're in. You're Nintendo. You shaped my generation of gamers and the one before mine with creative and innovative and genre-defining games, and you still do that. You keep trying new things, from classics like the original Legend of Zelda or Super Mario Bros. To more modern innovations like Splatoon. And now, while American game culture is largely stuck on bland shooters and repetitive action games, your content, your games, and your systems stand on their own as a unique entity. The people who love you, the people who own Wii U systems and support what you do, we don't love you because we want more shooters. We love you because we want something different. And you give that to us. So please, don't give in to this temptation to only give the US what it seems like we want. Because the people who actually matter to your business decisions over here, the people who should be driving your efforts here in the States, are the people who want your unique and interesting games. You're different, Nintendo. That's why we love you. And that's also why we want games like Fatal Frame 5, and want it in a format that we can actually use. Contributing to the stagnation of Western video game culture hardly seems like something you would particularly want to do, so I'm hoping that all these voices are heard, and maybe can help you see what a market you're missing out on over here. That's it for this episode of Games as Lit 101, so make sure to subscribe, like, and follow the series on its various platforms, and check out the Patreon if you really like what the show is doing. Next week, we're going to forge an unlikely connection between Far Cry 3 and Jack London's classic works, The Call of the Wild and White Fang. So until then, class dismissed.